The Canopy Group would like to thank State Farm, American Family, and Liberty Mutual for all of their future notifications. These notifications are delivered every 6 months to your mailbox as your insurance bill. These insurance companies have the ability to increase your insurance premium every 6 months, and your agent can't do anything about it. Your agent has no options, just the one company. So if you go to your mailbox and open your 6-month policy to discover yet another significant premium increase, do not panic. Think Canopy Group. The Canopy Group has 16 different insurance companies for you, 16 different options. The Canopy Group offers only annual policies. That limits the insurance company's ability to increase your premium. They can only do it once a year rather than twice. Coming soon, another 6-month policy increase for you. Don't panic. Contact the Canopy Group at 800-967-3389 or go online to thecanopygroup.com.
TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand. Minnesota Vikings, the NFL, football. Yeah, football. Welcome to Purple Podcast.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Purple Podcast. Matthew Coller with you, along with former NFL quarterback Sage Rosenfels. Sage, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm somewhere between Des Moines, Iowa, and Omaha, Nebraska, on my way back from the Twin Cities, of which I was for the last few days. So, looking forward to getting home for the next week or so.
So we've talked about like you doing other podcast ideas. Sage on the Road could be like a whole other podcast where you're just driving and you just talk about whatever the hell you happen to be thinking about at that time.
Well, that's sort of the thing. You know, when you live in Omaha, you sort of live absolutely in the smack middle of nowhere. You know, right. It's like I'm 2.5 hours from Ames, where I went to college. I'm 4 hours from my parents in eastern Iowa. I'm 5.5 hours to the Twin Cities. I'm 3 hours from Kansas City. I'm 7.5 hours from Denver. And I'm on the road a lot. I like to travel. Sometimes I can fly, and other times I feel like it's just better to drive, especially when I have my dog. So, yeah, I'm on the road a lot. I put about 35,000 miles a year on my car.
Wow. And you can reflect on the Vikings offense as you are driving, of course. I'm sure that's all you were thinking about.
Well, I reflect on it or I talk about it, whether it's you or other. It's amazing how many phone calls I get from radio stations around the country that want to talk about the Vikings. You know, they become a sort of a national franchise. For one, two, they're in the mix, and they have been in the mix the last few years. You know, people want to talk about Kirk Cousins. They want to talk about, you know, this offense and you know, Dalvin Cook and Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. And so it's, you know, I am talking about the Vikings a lot, and not just on the Purple Podcast. And
well, thanks for making me feel special. But the other thing is too, if you're on my end of this thing, if you nab yourself a journeyman quarterback who can talk about the game the way that many journeymen can, I mean, you're a special breed. So when we can get you to break down, you know, quarterback play, that's the best thing you can ask for. So I'm not surprised that you get lots of you know, phone calls asking for your services. So let's start there then. I mean, I went back and watched the tape, Sage, and I thought they checked off every box for what Mike Zimmer wanted them to change. There were a lot of simple things. They got Dalvin Cook the football on some screens, and they threw it to Kyle Rudolph. Like, imagine that, just getting 7-8 yards to Kyle Rudolph. And they did some simplistic things. A little mesh in the middle of the field with Rudolph and Thielen. A little slant flat combination. Like things that are just the simple stuff that they can execute really well because they have great players. And I thought John DeFilippo had himself a bounce back game.
I think, you know, making Kyle Rudolph in particular, you know, probably more often the number one guy in some of these progressions, I think is a good idea. And, you know, people are like, are you crazy? I mean, we got Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. Yes, we do. But to make them the number one guy, you know, down the field, that means the quarterback has to hold on to the football a lot. And I think that what the Vikings need to do, what Cousins needs to do, is get the ball out of his hands. You know, the longer the ball is in his hands, the more chance of, you know, sort of bad things happening. linemen getting beat. We've talked about it, ad nauseum, that they don't run the football well, so they have to throw it, which exposes Cousins and this offense to other problems. And so, Rudy is really the receiver that's the closest to the football, other than maybe a running back or something. But, you can do some quick passes to try to get the ball out of your hands. And he's so sure-handed. He's not super fast, so he's not a stretch-the-field guy. He's, getting closer and closer to sort of that Jason Witten underneath security blanket. And in this game was the most catches he's had all year, going back to the Packers game in week 2. And sure, the Vikings were really, really efficient on offense, had no turnovers, and had a very successful day.
So with Rudolph, they talk about the running game setting up second and short or third and short, but with Rudolph on first down, he's great because, like you said, he catches everything. They complete 82% of passes this year when throwing his way, and it's generally been 70% or higher, even with Case Keenum, Sam Bradford, Teddy Bridgewater, because like you said, he catches everything. So if you run something simple to him, like there was one play on first down where he just found a little space in the zone, and it was like 8 yards. Perfect. I mean, then you're a 2nd and 2. You can run play action. You can run a shot play down the field to Thielen or Diggs. I mean, it sets up so much, and ignoring him in the offense over the first, really half of this season for the most part, outside of 1 or 2 games, I think has been a bad plan. They haven't really used him a lot, even in the red zone. He only has 2 touchdowns this year. So getting him a lot more involved, I think, is where this starts and does open up a lot of other things. And I was looking at one particular play on a 3rd down where there were 4 guys around Stephon Diggs, 0 guys around Kyle Rudolph. They drop it off to Rudolph for a first down. I think he's one of those sort of linchpin type of pieces, even though he isn't the Diggs and Thielen centerpiece of the offense.
Well, yeah, and he's crafty. And that's a word I like to use for tight ends who don't have, extreme vertical speed, and they're not a down the field, almost a wide receiver / tight ends. These guys who are a little bit more lumberers, but they're crafty. They catch everything. They understand coverage and understand how to get open. Enough separation where the quarterback has a chance to throw the ball. Of course, it helps that you're 6'6" and have long arms and can catch everything, from 10 feet down to your ankles, basically. There's something about him. They probably should work him into the offense more. The Vikings need to figure out what their sort of offensive mentality is. Are we going to continue to try to run the football and be unsuccessful, or not try to run it, or whatever? Are we going to be a throwing team? If we are, what does that expose us to negatively versus positively, and how do we minimize those negative issues? And one of those things, if they decide to throw the ball more, is that sort of quick game, 3-step, 5-step, get the ball out, a little bootleg stuff, and one of those things is get the ball to their tight end, Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah, and then Dalvin Cook is the other big part of this too. And using him on a jet sweep early in the game sets up, I think, the other team to have to really pay attention to those fake jet sweeps that a lot of teams use now. And I think the Vikings could use a lot more to have that type of action that's going to make the linebacker move his eyes right before the snap to pay attention to whether, someone like Dalvin Cook or Stephon Diggs is going to take the jet sweep and run with it. And I thought that sort of set a tone that, we're going to use Dalvin Cook in some different ways today. And then getting him going on the screen game, it was so much more of an all-around type of game plan that it reminded me of what Pat Shurmur had done in 2017. It almost made me think, Sage, that Mike Zimmer was like, look, here's what we did last year. We gave the ball to lots of different people. We spread it around. We threw these play action plays, which they hit on a few. We threw some screens to Dalvin Cook. Like this isn't that complicated, man. And don't ever leave Riley Reif alone on Khalil Mack again. Just let's move the pocket and get Kirk out. He's surprisingly, Sage, I think he's surprisingly good when he's rolling out at keeping his eyes down the field and letting things develop and finding people like he did on that Adam Thielen touchdown.
Listen, if you watch, I always say when you're talking about an NFL quarterback, go back and figure out when they came into the league, how were they trained? More than college, like those first few years in the NFL, as a young guy, you got a new coach who's going to really try to break you in and teach you those first fundamentals of football, really, at a pro level. And I go back to him, and it's Washington, it's Kyle Shanahan, it's that zone system with the play action and bootleg.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So usually, and he was successful in it. So that is what he does well. He's had 1 million reps at it. It usually keeps him out of trouble when you're running around. You have a place to throw the ball away. You have a little more time. You can see everything. You can see things develop. Those type of things. I think it's something that he does very, very well.
Yeah.
The play action game, and that bootleg game should be something, because they're actually fairly, especially bootlegs. Gary Kubiak, our coach, and Kyle too, would say, never take a sack on a bootleg.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I probably ran over the course of 10 starts and preseason games and all these things. I may have run, 300 or 400 bootlegs, in that offense. Not once did I take a sack.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Because you don't, if you feel like you're going to have pressure, you throw it at the feet of the tight end or the fullback that's right in front of you. And you just move on
backwards.
to the next play. You usually don't throw bootlegs on 3rd down and 7, right? You throw them on 1st down to complement the run, 2nd down, 3rd and short, right? So there's nothing wrong with punting for one. And there's nothing wrong with moving on to the next play. And if you can call, 4 or 5 bootlegs a game, those are plays that don't have to be 1st down, shotgun, drop back pass. Good luck, Riley Reef.
Right. And I'm not, and that's the thing, is that you got to give Riley Reef help. And giving him a bootleg, you're rolling away from their right defensive end, who's probably their best pass rusher, more likely than not, coming off of the backside of the quarterback. So when you can roll out away from that guy and maybe even give multiple blockers, have somebody stay in to help, then that's how Chicago was able to eliminate Everson Griffin in that game, was rolling out Mitch Trubisky quite a bit. And I thought that if they carried over some of these things that they were able to do, and another one on my list was Kirk Cousins actually taking off when he's got a chance. If they carry over some of these things, getting Delvin the ball, simplifying, getting Kirk out in bootlegs more often, I think it could be a great offense going down the stretch, even despite some of their issues with protection and run blocking.
Offensive linemen, of all the plays that they can do, and if you ask them, what are your favorite types of plays? Are they straight zone running plays, outside zone? Are they power plays and traps? Are they pass blocking? Are they play action? Are they, naked bootleg type plays? I bet you bootleg's fairly high up on their list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They get to come off the ball. They're sort of hard to screw up for them. You come off, you have your guy, but you just really get to come off, and so it's okay if you miss a little bit, right? They're probably not going to sack the quarterback, and a lot of times big plays occur because of them, and sacks usually don't occur because of them. So I think it's just sort of one of their favorite concepts if you ask them, and it's because a lot of good things happen, and it gets the quarterback out of the pocket and away from trouble. So
Kirk taking a couple of free 1st downs with his legs. He does not run a 4.440, but teams, if they're playing, especially to take away Thielen and Diggs deep, are often dropping back in zones and things like that, and giving him areas where he could take off and get 7 or 8 yards and get a 1st down on a 3rd down. How should he balance not really being a quarterback that you want to run all the time, like Mitch Trubisky or Lamar Jackson, but a quarterback that can certainly do it when he's given the opportunity?
I think for him, since he's such a recognizer of coverages, that you start talking about, hey, on, 3rd down situations, if you're catching 2-man or you're catching certain coverages where it might be a smart move to run, you can move that a little bit higher up. It's not really more of a reaction. It's actually something that's a little bit more, voluntary, I guess. Hey, this is a good coverage to run if my 1st or 2nd read's not open. And I think to sort of make it a part of his, like, hey, runs good. We like your runs. Your runs are very positive. Don't shy away from it. This, that, and the other. So one issue with him running though is he's not now I was thinking about this morning. He's not a super instinctual athlete in some ways, an instinctual runner for sure. And, there's a lot of running is actually instinctual, and that's why he probably looks a little bit uncomfortable doing it, because it's not sort of part of his natural, athletic ability.
Right. He's not going to drop any sort of, Barry Sanders type juke moves on anybody. It's just, when it's there were a couple times in Chicago that when I look back at the tape especially, it's like, dude, if you just run, you're going to get 8-9 yards and get a 1st down on a key play. and he didn't do that. And Mike Zimmer said on Monday that he talked with Kirk about taking a little more of that. And coincidentally, in John Gruden's QB camp, he talks to Cousins about having opportunities to run. So I guess it's always been a thing that maybe he's been a little hesitant to do. Now, another thing I want to ask you about is the quarterback sneak. And it comes up this week for me because Cousins was successful on it. Ran right up to the line and got a 2nd and 3, I think got a first down by just sneaking up the middle. And Tom Brady is the grand lord of the QB sneak, that he's just had such incredible success with it. The Patriots love using it. He's like 90-something% for his career success rate when they run it on 3rd or 4th and 1. Why does that work, and what are the things you're keeping in mind as a quarterback when you're sneaking?
Well, I'll tell you this. It does seem like different teams have different sort of rules and how they block quarterback sneak. I think there are almost different blocking schemes and styles within that. You know, who you're going to double team. Because do you double team the down guys, or do you try to get up to the linebackers, and the technique involved and all those types of things. The fronts, the different fronts. A lot of teams just sort of wedge block it for the most part. Everyone just sort of steps inside and goes low and fires off and whatever. And the quarterback finds a spot. I believe other teams, I think the Patriots are one of them, with Tom Brady, is that they actually, it's almost like a play. And the play it's a sneak, but it's whatever the look is how it's sort of blocked, and what Tom does because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And what gives them the best chance. I do believe they have that play down to a science, probably better than other NFL teams.
How do you read it as a quarterback for where you're going to go? I mean, because if they got Gilbert Brown there or Ted Washington, you're probably not going right into him, or Linval Joseph. You're probably not going right into the nose tackle right over your center, right? I mean, or what are you kind of
usually you pick a side, and that's predetermined before the game, going into the game. Are we going to go right or are we going to go left? And a lot of teams, it might be like automatically we like going right, because then you'll lead with your left shoulder, and so that your throwing shoulder and the ball aren't exposed,
okay,
or whatever, it's a fumble or something like that, right? Alex Gibbs of the Texans would say, whether you're on the goal line or a quarterback sneak, never put the ball out,
right?
Unless it's 4th down. If it's 4th down, by all means put the ball out there.
Right, because who cares if you fumble?
Trying to reach for it. Who cares if you fumble?
Right.
But I see Drew Brees jump over and put the ball out on 1st down all the time on the 1-foot line, right? So yeah, there's different defenses too. You can see guys are in that sort of 4-point stance. They're looking at what they call a submarine, where they're literally just submarine at sort of the knees, sort of to get underneath the center so he can't push it and just create a pile. And that look, a lot of times that's when you want to jump over, because you're not going to have that threat. Where are the linebackers in this thing? Are they right there at the line, or are they, back 4 yards deep?
Right.
Maybe ready to take on some sort of different type of block, or run laterally side to side. There is actually a lot that goes into a sneak. It is incredible.
I know, and that's why I love it. It's like, I asked Bill Belichick on the conference call about the success for QB sneaks, and would you like to know his answer?
Sure.
It's not a long one. I said, so Bill, what's the reason for your guys' incredible success, since you've been the head coach of these QB sneaks? They even did a study on it at Yale. I didn't mention that, but they did. And he just says, execution.
That's exactly right. So that's the whole point.
Execution.
I think you could think he's being sarcastic, like it's super quarterback sneak. Let's not overthink this. I do believe they have sort of certain rules, and he's not going to give those rules up. He's not going to say, well, when they're in he's not going to say that. But my guess is they do have, because there are times you look at the best hole might be around your, like almost like a mini option, where you see this hole because there's 4 guys crammed right over the ball basically, and you want to run outside, towards the, B to C gap, and maybe there's a softer spot over there with a wide defensive end or something like that. So, there's aspects of it that you sort of see those things too. And that's where, Brady and the line obviously seem like to me like they're working together really well.
Man, I'm just going to say this for our listeners. If you like football, that was your breakdown right there. The QB sneak. And I love it. That's awesome. And I expect to see them. And what's really interesting is that the Vikings are the best team in the NFL since 2015 at shutting down 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, especially on runs up the middle. They are 4% better than the next best team at runs up the middle in those situations, which would be my argument for why Linval Joseph is the best nose tackle in the game. But when it comes to Brady, the bigger picture on Brady, we did a podcast where we got a receiver's perspective who had played with Tom Brady. As a quarterback, Sage, you know, we broke it down Aaron Rodgers, we broke it down Drew Brees. What is different about Brady from some of the other elite quarterbacks?
Accuracy and decision making, unbelievable instincts, his feel in the pocket of what's going on around him, his spatial recognition and awareness is incredible. His accuracy, watch how many balls that he passes are in the perfect spots. Mm-hmm. You know, Jason Garrett used to talk about when he was my quarterback coach in Miami. Watch how many of Tom Brady's passes hit guys right in the chest. Hit them in the chest where they cannot drop them. Stick it on that front number. Literally do not let that guy drop it. And that accuracy is just incredible. Obviously recognition of who might be open and finding that one-on-one matchup. You know, they do a great job with a lot of concepts, but really it's finding one-on-one matchups and finding great matchups. And if my guy can beat that guy in man-man and sort of one-on-one coverage, because even in zone, a lot of times these zones are sort of matchup zones, you know. So his ability to diagnose all of that is incredible. But really, to me, he makes great decisions. He's incredibly accurate. The fact that he's only gotten hurt one time, and our special guest is a part of this conversation. Our special backup quarterback coming up. But his ability to not get hurt, his availability, also incredible.
Now, the accuracy thing, I was thinking about this the other day, about the greatest quarterbacks of all time, when you just write them down. Okay, so you do have your number one picks like Peyton Manning and John Elway. But so many of the greatest quarterbacks of all time are not top draft picks at all. Brady, very famously, but even Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers is a first rounder, but he's still dropped in the draft. I mean, imagine like you let Aaron Rodgers just pass by you, in the first round or something. A guy who set up a franchise to be successful and competitive for a decade plus, and you just let him drop to whatever he was, 17th or something. And I was thinking about this, Sage, of just the emphasis on accuracy maybe isn't even enough when it comes to how NFL teams evaluate these quarterbacks. I mean, the mental processing is very hard to know when a guy's going to get into a real NFL game and so forth. But it's almost like, but he's got the big arm, or he's athletic, or he's got this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, oh, and I guess he's accurate, when accuracy seems like that should be number one.
So what's the most important thing about a guy or a woman who shoots a basketball?
A woman who shoots a basketball.
Or a guy, man or woman, when they shoot a basketball. What's the most important thing?
Do you mean like technique, or just like from like
exactly? It's not their size. It's not their technique.
Okay, I see.
It's not their 40 time. Can they put it in the hoop?
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Steph Curry is a terrible combine athlete.
Right.
But he puts the ball in the hoop. And he knows how to, have spatial recognition and get open and he sees the whatever. But he puts the ball in the hoop.
And
so I don't care if you're, rather than being whatever he is, 6'3" or whatever he is. If some guy is 6'6", he's going to be the NBA, top 5 lottery pick if he shoots like Steph Curry. But Steph Curry drops lower and lower and lower and is overlooked. We look at athletes a lot of times. We see the big arm, we see the athletic ability, but are they an accurate passer and good decision maker? Because that is the thing. That without that, Steph Curry is just a college basketball player. Doesn't have any exceptional skills if he's not a great shooter. And we fail to really see that or recognize that or understand that.
That's funny you bring that up, because that's exactly how the Minnesota Timberwolves ended up passing over Steph Curry, was that they valued Johnny Flynn's athleticism, and how hilarious did that turn out, right?
The Canopy Group would like to thank State Farm, American Family, and Liberty Mutual for all of their future notifications. These notifications are delivered every 6 months to your mailbox as your insurance bill. These insurance companies have the ability to increase your insurance premium every 6 months, and your agent can't do anything about it. Your agent has no options, just the one company. So if you go to your mailbox and open your 6-month policy to discover yet another significant premium increase, do not panic. Think Canopy Group. The Canopy Group has 16 different insurance companies for you, 16 different options. The Canopy Group offers only annual policies. That limits the insurance company's ability to increase your premium. They can only do it once a year rather than twice. Coming soon, another 6-month policy increase for you. Don't panic. Contact the Canopy Group at 800-967-3389 or go online to thecanopygroup.com.
I think too often, whether it's at the combine or the private workouts or whatever, that GMs, coaches, whoever it might be who picks these quarterbacks, they get too involved with, how big is he, what's his height, what's his weight, what's his this, that, and the other. And the real question is he accurate? Does he make great decisions? And then maybe have that higher in the list than arm strength. Because, listen, Drew Brees, his whole thing was that he did not have a big arm, and he's now being talked about as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Right.
If you really look at the numbers. I mean, he has led the league in passing so many times, it's not even close compared to, the other great ones we see on the list.
Mm-hmm.
He led the league in passing during a lot of these Tom Brady years, during a lot of these Peyton Manning years, during a lot of these Brett Favre years. Drew Brees was beating them all. Was beating them all with yards and touchdowns. You could say it's the offense. You could say it's this. The fact is he's 6 foot. He doesn't have a big arm, but he's incredibly accurate and he makes great decisions and he can process information. And to me, that's the thing that also a lot of people miss on. How do they process information? That's this great unknown that has to do with instincts and how you think and how you take in information and shoot it back out, how your body responds. It's a very, very hard thing to sort of figure out with some combine test.
Yeah.
It's very psychological. And I do think that whether it's college football, pro football, they are looking into this type of research more and more.
Mm-hmm.
When we meet a kid that's even an 8th grader and he has talent, but how does his mind process information?
Right.
And where does he struggle? Can you improve that? So it's an incredibly interesting conversation because quarterback is sort of this great unknown of how to find the right one for your team.
Yeah, no, there's a really good book by Bruce Feldman about this, about all the things that go on where there are people who claim that they can psychologically profile young kids to figure out if they can have the same personality type as Brett Favre or whatever else. And
I'll tell you this, Pat Mahomes and Drew Brees, there's a test out there for a private company. I know about this, but Pat Mahomes and Drew Brees scored almost identical on the various sort of intellectual processing tests that they took. I think that is fascinating.
It is. It's one of the reasons I love to watch the Gruden camps, or did, RIP to the Gruden camps. He should have stuck with that because the coaching thing isn't working out great. But I love to watch how the players reacted, like how engaged they seem with the information, because that's 95% of the game, right? Is just like processing the information, learning it, being engaged with it, being enthusiastic about it, and listening to criticism too, because Gruden would actually rip guys. Mahomes, he showed a bunch of interceptions. What are you making this throw for? Why are you carrying the ball like that? And I thought Mahomes, and the way he reacted to it, he was one of my favorite guys in that draft, in part because of his Gruden camp, because it just looked like he had the personality to grow. And that's what you need to do most, I think, to be a great NFL quarterback, is to grow year after year, and especially when you come out of college and learn quickly with all the things that you get thrown at you. And if you have some weird ego about it, right? Like that you can't be criticized or something else like that, it's going to make it much tougher for you to succeed.
You know why I like the Gruden camp is because I and every other quarterback that went through the combine or came out, for the draft or whatever, was hoping to be drafted. We all went through that, probably minimum 3 up to 20 times, 30 times.
Yeah.
every team gives you that, 30 minutes to an hour session. Sometimes it's just talking to the quarterback's coach one-on-one. Other times it's in a private room with film work, watching your games or watching their team's games, talking about football, and they're trying to figure you out.
Right.
They're trying to, the Gruden thing people like, because that's what, we all had to do. A coach watching film, but just talking.
Yeah.
Getting to know somebody and how people react to that. It's incredible exercise to gather information.
What was that like for you?
I think for me it was easy and in a sense of, I went to this college and we were very disciplined in college. Our football coach, we did not have guys get in trouble. I was sort of the all-American kid per se. I didn't get in trouble. I got good grades. I worked hard. I worked as hard as anybody in the weight room. I never was late for anything. You're always on time. You're always sort of team first. I sort of came from that sort of old school mentality. Mm-hmm. And there just would be, and so, for me coming into that type of thing, playing for Marty Schottenheimer, the supposed disciplinarian coach, that seemed totally normal to me.
Yeah.
I'm from a small town in Iowa. You don't talk back to your elders. You don't talk back to your bosses. You stick your head down and you work your butt off and your team first.
Right.
And so for me, that wasn't a big jump, but some kids are from different parts of the country. They're raised differently. And so for me, it wasn't that hard. Now, when they would start to get into like, okay, this is what we call these formations, and they try to give you a little bit of their offense and then try to learn that in literally like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they ask you, to call something and you struggle with it because you can't, they just dumped a whole bunch of things on you. That was tough. Mm-hmm. That was tough if you don't have a prior history. It's like me trying to teach you a little version of French in 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes from now you're going to regurgitate something back to me. That's hard to do.
Yeah, right. And maybe they're looking for just as much for how you go about trying to do it as opposed to expecting you to be able to nail it, because almost nobody could in that situation. So,
that's kids,
interesting.
It's also just a reassuring for a coach to go, oh, like I can tell this kid has been in this offense before. Some of these basic concepts he's run.
Yeah.
You could tell like, hey, we run a lot of this. They run a lot. Why do you think people like Iowa offensive linemen in the NFL? They're basically pro offensive linemen in college the way they're taught. So they know these guys have 4 or 5 years of practice on these very same things that a lot of pro coaches agree with.
Right.
Then you get to these other teams who are all spread and everything is spread out, and like you're speaking a different language. You're talking about zone concepts and all these things at a very high level to all these various fronts and whatever. You don't see that at the college level as much, and so it's reassuring to we're going to draft this guy. He may not be as talented, but he's got 4 years of practice in front of him by Kirk Ferentz, an NFL coach. That's a big advantage for an NFL offensive coordinator, offensive lineman.
Right. That is really, really interesting. In the translation, how some guys, now maybe, I think the book on Mitch Trubisky was that he didn't know a ton of this stuff, but
he knew nothing. Supposedly at UNC, their offense was like nothing about sort of what you're taught as an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, so then
how to diagnose defense and I have no idea what their offense was, but I've heard that from a professional NFL quarterbacks coach.
And so
he knew very little coming out.
Him having to kind of wait a little bit there before he actually got into games, and then having this extra year was probably huge for him to have some success, because if he had been thrown right from the very beginning, it probably would have been really hard for him. So, circumstances always, I think about that a lot, about different circumstances, like Josh Rosen. Like, oh my gosh, give the guy a break. Like, you put him in with this team that's putrid, that's starting Andre Smith at left tackle or something, and it's just like, oh my gosh. Maybe you should have just sat the guy and let Sam Bradford get beaten up for a whole year. But, anyway, Sage, we have a journeyman quarterback of the week to get to.
The Canopy Group would like to thank State Farm, American Family, and Liberty Mutual for all of their future notifications. These notifications are delivered every 6 months to your mailbox as your insurance bill. These insurance companies have the ability to increase your insurance premium every 6 months, and your agent can't do anything about it. Your agent has no options, just the one company. So if you go to your mailbox and open your 6-month policy to discover yet another significant premium increase, do not panic. Think Canopy Group. The Canopy Group has 16 different insurance companies for you, 16 different options. The Canopy Group offers only annual policies. That limits the insurance company's ability to increase your premium. They can only do it once a year rather than twice. Coming soon, another 6-month policy increase for you. Don't panic. Contact the Canopy Group at 800-967-3389 or go online to thecanopygroup.com.
Show some respect.
Listen, bud,
Salute.
I've traveled every road in this here land.
It's time for Matthew and Sage to honor one of the NFL's great journeyman quarterbacks.
Matt Castle. And I've got a few things to shout out from his Wikipedia, if you're interested, on Matt Castle. Known for his year of going 10-5 as a starter with the Patriots and still somehow missing the playoffs that season. But his wiki is a journeyman's gem, Sage. He played in the Little League World Series in 1994. His family's house was destroyed by the Northridge earthquake in 94. He played baseball for one season at USC in 2004 and went 0-1 with an ERA of 9.35. So that didn't work out very well for him.
That could have been one run in the bottom in the ninth inning, right, of one game, and that was it, right?
Well,
and he lost the tie.
There was a little,
like that.
Yeah, there was a little bit more. He
Okay.
had 10 total strikeouts, so he must have pitched a few innings, but still was drafted. Oh, he played in 8 total games. So there you go. And had one at bat at USC and was still drafted in the 36th round, which tells you about the MLB draft, right?
That's 36th round. It's a lot of rounds.
It's, they actually cut
I would say he's a talented kid. And, by the way, didn't start at quarterback at USC.
Correct.
At all.
Yeah. What a wild story. Like, just the guy didn't even start, and he ends up on an NFL team. And then, at one point, this is my favorite thing with Matt Castle, is the debate shows, the shows where they yell at each other. They were debating at one time whether the Patriots should trade Brady because they had Castle.
Well, yeah, and Castle was so much cheaper, and yada yada. Yeah, it is incredible. And by the way, there should be an asterisk. We should talk about guys occasionally who weren't necessarily the starters in college. Like Brad Johnson was not a starter at Florida State. Right? A.J. Feely started about a half a season or so at Oregon, and then he got hurt. Then Joey Harrington took over, and that was it. He never played his senior year. There are these guys who sort of fall through the cracks because, I guess the guy in front of them was a great college player, and they were the backup and never played, but actually were NFL caliber quarterbacks.
So
and Matt Castle is one of those guys.
You know how we have a minimum for what you need to be a journeyman quarterback? There's also, these are like bonus points. Like, if you didn't even really start in college and you end up having a career that lasts 14 seasons, boom, you get a bonus. You get a journeyman bonus.
He's up there with Josh McCown, I would say. How many teams did he play for? I bet you it's at least 7.
Okay, so he's been with Kansas, New England, Kansas City, Minnesota, Tennessee, Dallas, Detroit. So
6?
Yeah, he's, and he made a Pro Bowl. But in one of those weird situations where everyone makes the Pro Bowl. What a journeyman career. This is amazing.
Unbelievable. He does not have the return to the same team.
No, he doesn't have a second
stint. Return to the scene of the crime. Doesn't have a second stint.
But it's not over yet, so there's a good chance.
Now he is at this point only thought of as a backup.
Yes.
Probably come near the end, but at one point was known to be bring him in to start / maybe there's a young guy to compete. Or he's going to compete with a guy, he's the veteran, and there's a young guy. he would also be one of those guys who probably bounces around, the Belichick tree of coaching, right? Like he might end up back in Tennessee with a second stint because Vrabel's there.
Now,
like this is, or whatever, right? So there's random spots where he might end up, maybe on Romeo Crennel's staff or something somewhere, down the line.
Now, so the thing about him that he gets just so many more bonus points. He was in a 3-way quarterback competition with the Bills and lost and got traded to Dallas and then started in pretty much a tank year so they could get Ezekiel Elliott. But I think that even more bonus points for him goes to at one time you convinced someone you could be their franchise quarterback, but like you definitely couldn't. And that was his random 10-5 year with Kansas City where he was legit good for that season. It's sort of like a Case Keenum type thing where he was really actually good, but then they were convinced he could be their franchise quarterback, and no.
Well, there's an aspect of, as I said, I think I've said on the show before, Brian Griese once told me, the key with staying in the league for a long time is when you do play, you have to play well.
Right, yeah.
You have to get completions. You have to move the ball. You can't embarrass yourself. You have to show some good stuff. And you may not even get that chance. You might be one of those guys who literally, like, you're in it for 2 years, you don't really play, and they decide to move on and they like somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you may never get that chance, and that's it. But if you do get that chance, you can't go out there and throw a stinker right off the bat. And he, in his first action, real action, played great. I believe it was his rookie year. I think it might have been the Doug Flutie drop kick extra point game. I think he played the second half of that game, and it was a crappy weather game. It was sort of snowy, wet, muddy. And I was like, man, this kid's impressive. He's really letting it sling. He's not playing conservative out here. He's making some tight throws and some tight windows against our defense, which was really good. He was competing. I was like, I like this kid. He's gutsy. Whatever. He's an undrafted kid. Never heard of him before.
Your memory is strong.
Sure enough, 14 years later, he's still playing.
11 for 20, 2 touchdowns, 168 yards, 116 quarterback rating in a loss to your Miami Dolphins, 26-28 in the Doug Flutie kick game. How about that?
Unbelievable. Well, he was 11 for 20 for 168 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. That's
I think Brady played the first half. So just in the second half.
168
Not
yards.
bad for an undrafted guy out of Southern California playing in that cold weather up in New England.
And you're right. If you show even a flash, then people are like, oh, he can do it kind of. So that's interesting.
I feel like it was grass back then. I feel like the field was really muddy and worn out. So I'm not positive. I feel like that was pre-artificial turf.
He had a chance to win that game on a 2-point conversion, but it didn't work. So that was how the Miami Dolphins came out victors on that day. It was a Ben Watson touchdown. Ben Watson's still around.
Watson's still around.
He also threw one to Tim Dwight, and Gus Frerotte was the opposing team's quarterback. I mean, that's just, wow.
Gus Frerotte was our quarterback. I was the number 2. Cleo Lemon was the number 3.
This is our
Garrett,
type of game.
Jason Garrett, my quarterback's coach. Scott Linehan calling the plays. Will Muschamp at linebackers coach, sort of defensive coordinator, and obviously Nick Saban, our head coach. That was quite the team.
Man, that is a classic journeyman quarterback NFL football game right there. Last thing to note from his Wikipedia, on the night of January 26, 2012, a fire broke out in a family's house in the village of Loch Lloyd, Missouri. Castle, seeing the smoke from the fire, ran to the house to alert the family. The family was able to make it out alive. So not only a great journeyman quarterback, a hero.
He is like the all-American dream. I mean,
right?
You got to be, if you're Matt Castle's dad, man, you really should have won the lottery for a son. From childhood all the way into now, I'm sure he is very proud parents.
That's right. They definitely should be. All right, Sage. This has been one of the best, I think, journeyman quarterback analysis of Matt Castle. So, thank you always for your time. Safe travels if this hasn't taken up your entire journey through the Midwest. And
almost back to Omaha. Almost there.
All right. Very, very good. Very good. Well, safe travels the rest of the way, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds great.
All right, and thank you all, as always, for listening to the Purple Podcast.
The Canopy Group would like to thank State Farm, American Family, and Liberty Mutual for all of their future notifications. These notifications are delivered every 6 months to your mailbox as your insurance bill. These insurance companies have the ability to increase your insurance premium every 6 months, and your agent can't do anything about it. Your agent has no options, just the one company. So if you go to your mailbox and open your 6-month policy to discover yet another significant premium increase, do not panic. Think Canopy Group. The Canopy Group has 16 different insurance companies for you, 16 different options. The Canopy Group offers only annual policies. That limits the insurance company's ability to increase your premium. They can only do it once a year rather than twice. Coming soon, another 6-month policy increase for you. Don't panic. Contact the Canopy Group at 800-967-3389 or go online to thecanopygroup.com.
Pelosi vote. I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. Nancy Pelosi was nominated by fellow House Democrats to be Speaker.
In the course of these last days and weeks, has been my privilege to listen to new members, listen to our members who have been here a while, hear their views about how we go forward.
But Pelosi still faces a showdown vote when the full House convenes in January. There are some Democrats opposed to her being Speaker. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis says there is no smoking gun to show a connection between the Saudi crown prince and the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Mattis was asked if he heard the Khashoggi audio tape.
I cannot understand that language, but I have spent more than enough time in service of our country. I know what grim circumstances can be. I needed to see what was said, and I read the translations of what is alleged to be the tape. We do not have the tapes.
I'm Ed Donahue.